With that, our next speaker and our last one is Lonny McKague. Born and raised in Ogama, Sask, bought his family farm in 1973 and started a purebred herd in 1979. I hope that was livestock. Since then, he has been actively involved in community and industry organizations and initiatives. Some of these include national and provincial cattle organizations, director of a producer-owned elevator in Ogama, and traveled to China for a national trade mission. But most notably, and what brings him here today, is his involvement in the inception of the Redcoat Road and Rail, a 114-kilometer short-line rail line that runs from Assiniboia to Pangman, purchased in 1999. Currently, Redcoat Road and Rail is a thriving business serving car loading at 6 producer-owned facilities as well as trackside loading. Lonny, please.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'll promise I won't keep you too long. Right for forward, left for back. Okay, just to make sure. When you write a bio for yourself, it gets difficult. I told my daughter, just put farmer down. And that pretty much sums me up anyway, because just sort of an average person that has worked with a group of average people in our community, but by working together we sort of achieved a couple things that have been very successful, and we're very, very proud of some of the achievements, and some of them have maybe just even been a little above average in the end result. So I even struggled with the title of the presentation because to try to fit rail issues into it, but truthfully we ended up going with a large crop and low returns, and I think farmers can appreciate that, because it's certainly exactly where we're at. We haven't totally seen the results of the low returns yet, but we've seen some of the problems that the large crop is giving us. And I also believe that the issue that we face today in the rail car supply and the rail service is probably the largest economic and social issue that farmers have faced in the last 12 or 15 years. I don't believe that there's another issue that will, in dollar-wise, outdo this one, and also in social impact. Maybe?
Press the circle right.
Circle right. There we go, got it. I'm just slow. So we're going to do an overview, a quick overview of where we're at, how I got here. And it's the Ogama elevator then and now, Redcoat Road and Rail. What are some of the issues, possible solutions, and questions? Just bear with me here. So Ogama elevator, originally we started it as a group of producers, almost all farmers, but not exclusively to farmers. We purchased the elevator from existing Sask wheat pool. We paid approximately $200,000 for the facility. We've been operating it for the last 13 years, and we've been paying dividends to the farmers for the last 8 or 9 years. We're completely paid for, we have money in the bank, and we're maintaining our facility. In fact, Paul Stowe just said they're upgrading to 250 tons an hour cleaning capacity, and we're just upgrading ours to 15 to 20. So Paul, we're trying to catch up to you. Our facility was set up with one purpose in mind, and that was to be a low-cost handler for producers. And by doing that, we had one buyer of our grain, one person that was ordering the grain, and that was the Canadian Wheat Board. We acted as a handler for them, as a cost-plus handler, and it was very, very efficient. Our goal was to maintain the facility, to be a low-cost handler and put as much return back in farmers' pockets as possible, with respecting the shareholders that the elevator had. And that's where we were. And we had to divert from there to where we are today under the new regime. And so we took it upon ourselves to reorganize, restructure, and refocus our energies. And one of the ways we've done that is we no longer had the Canadian Wheat Board as a monopoly and a person that would take our grain. We had to assist farmers in finding some markets for them. And I'll give you one example is we had a Chinese group that contacted us and we followed up with them, and we're moving flax out of Ogama every second week, put in containers at Vancouver and off to China. But the elevator company had to do this on behalf of farmers. Our little local group did this and in order to put some markets together with some local producers. And it's been very successful. One of the biggest issues we had right off the bat was a group of Chinese people buying my grain. I load it, when do I get paid? So we took it upon ourselves to be more like a lawyer and a broker or a middleman for this group. And we started a trend in Ogama that when your flax is hauled into Ogama, your samples are taken by our manager, an independent third party. We send those samples away. First of all, after you're hauled in, we send the tonnage to Minghai, and the tonnage is then 80% of the money is forwarded to you immediately. So within 1 or 2 or 3 days of hauling to us, you get your 80% of your money. We send the samples to a third-party grader, and once they grade the grain, the flax and the dockage is taken off, you get your rest of your 20%, and your flax hasn't left the Ogama elevator. Now, a couple cases it has, but we're sort of acting as a trustee for that grain, and we're not letting it leave until both parties are satisfied. And we've turned that over to other companies like Lansing and Gavilon, and we're sort of trying to make demands of them that they treat the farmers in the same way. Redcoat Road and Rail is another group that I'm involved in. That it's a separate partnership and a separate organization, but we started it 15 years ago. We had lots of problems in buying the rail line from CP. I was on the negotiating committee for 18 months and purchasing it from Canadian Pacific Railway. We were able to purchase the rail line for just over $1 million, and we've been operating very successfully. This year we will be debt-free. We had to borrow about $600,000 from financial institutions and the provincial government, and this is our 15th year, and we will be debt-free after this year. But we struggled in the transition from the single desk to where we are today, and we just about lost a lot of gains between the floods and the transition into the new system in the last couple of years. We could have used some transition money like Omnitrax and some of those other guys got in Manitoba, but in Saskatchewan and Alberta that wasn't offered to us. But we're here and we're still thriving today, and we're reaping some success right now because of all the problems farmers are having, and they're turning to us as a last ditch desperation. And so it's hard for me to stand here and say we're thriving, we're doing great, and we are. We're going to be turning business away here. We already have. And we're going to be turning more business away here in the near future. But we're doing it from people who are coming to us under desperation to get their grain moved and some cash flow. So that's where we are today. We interchange with Canadian Pacific Railway at Assiniboia, and Canadian Pacific, the Canadian Grain Commission allocates our cars. Canadian Pacific Railway will bring the cars down to the interchange spot. We pick them up and we bring them out to our 6 loading sites along our track. Now we're going to go get them, and when the cars get to Assiniboia, we're going to bring them out. That's not the issue. The issue is the cars don't always come to Assiniboia. And truthfully, I thought I'd heard all the excuses. Week 27, we had 34 cars on order. 34 cars came to Assiniboia. They happened to be all oil cars. I don't know where the mix-up was. We sell grain, we load grain. We had 34 oil cars delivered. So we were able to shuffle them over to Great Western Rail, but it didn't help the local farmers for week 27. We're caught up to week 25, 26 in Ogama right now on grain orders, but we're as far behind in other points along the line as week 19 and 20. So we're between 4 and 9 weeks behind in grain car orders, and for our little line, that's a lot. And we don't see it getting better in the next little while. We actually see us falling farther behind. CP will have to be very, very diligent in getting us our car runs for the next 2 or 3 months for us to make any gains at all. So putting the two businesses together, we started Redcoat Road Rail, and when they took the track out of commission, we interchanged with CP Rail, and neither business, the Ogama Elevator, the other facilities along the line, could survive without one another. By having a short line, we certainly have more flexibility on producer car loading sites. I got a phone call on Friday from a group near Estevan where they were told that CP Rail had just decommissioned their loading site. That was a producer car loading site. The one guy even had a facility built there, and they were unaware of that being decommissioned until last week actually. Now that's unusual, and I'm not going to take sides here yet because that would be unusual for CP to do that without proper notice and without proper regulatory actions being taken. But I am going to look into it and try to help them out and see if it was done properly and if there's any hope that they can get that back. But they're on a main line, and some of the executives on CP Rail, you could imagine, it's not profitable to stop and push 10 or 15 producer cars in when they can, just do 100 car spots down the road at another facility. So it's not that producer cars are first on their list. So there could be potential for abuse here, and we will get back to you on whether there is or not. So what are the issues? Well, everybody keeps asking and try to nail down what the main problem is. And I use this iceberg as an example. You can see 10% of the iceberg and there's 90% of it below the water. We're not going to be able to figure out probably 90% of the issues, but we know they're there, and we know that they can create problems. The Titanic wasn't sunk by the part of the iceberg they could see. They were sunk by the part of the iceberg that was under the water, that jutted out, and that hammered them. And so I think we have to be very, very cautious on how we approach some of the issues in the next little while and look at all the ramifications and even the perceived ramifications of some of the prospects that are coming up. And I'll get into that when we get into things like the rail cap issue. So one of the issues is weather. We certainly hear that we've had a cold winter, that it's created problems. We've heard Paul Stowe talk about it. We heard presentations on it, and it has been cold, and there's been cold spells. But sitting in Ogama, Saskatchewan, I brought my cows home from pasture on December 18th. There was no snow up until that part down in my area. We did have some cold weather, and I do accept that it creates problems for the rail companies. But this is Canada. They've been here a long time. And I'm not sure that's an excuse that we need to let them get away with, that the weather here is some sort of a surprise to them. And perhaps maybe we'll see, and it was thrown out yesterday in Assiniboia, that maybe we need some study into some engines that run more efficiently in cold weather, and I'd be the first one to support that if it was possible. Federal government gives Bombardier money in Quebec. Perhaps they build engines, they build locomotives. Perhaps there's some way we can team up with them to develop some engine power that just doesn't have these same issues in the wintertime that we're being told some of the engines do, if you accept that as an excuse, sorry. So I'm going to delete weather, as I can't do anything about it unless somebody here can change that as one of the issues that we probably can't deal with today. Competition for freight by other industries, and I'm actually going to delete this one too, because in Saskatchewan we have oil, we have potash, we have an abundance of resources that's not going away tomorrow, and we don't want it to. We want to encourage the success of every industry to promote their products, to get it moved to port, and we don't want to be the reason that another industry doesn't get their product to port. We want our share of the pie, but not at their expense, and we don't want to be them to get more than their share of the pie at our expense either. So I'm going to move on from competition, because I'm a believer that we need all the products and all the natural resources and industries to move sort of in a logistical, managed way. Lack of power, sidelines locomotives, laid off employees, we've heard a lot about it. I'm going to leave it up there. I think we can deal with it. And I think by just being a voice and presenting this as one of the problems and issues that we maybe can get some changes on that one. Sorry, I'll just go back and leave Hypercar Supply up there. I don't believe Hypercar Supply right now is an issue, and I think we heard some of that today. And it's strange, we're in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, where back in the early 70s, I remember Otto Lang purchasing hopper cars, and it was pretty controversial on some of the things he did. But the far-reaching payback for farmers was, we still feel the benefits today. People who weren't even born then and farm today still feel the benefits of some of those paybacks. And just on a side note, I was at a meeting not long ago, and Otto Lang actually spoke, and if you ever, some of you people from the Humboldt area would have heard him speak, and he was as enthusiastic and dynamic and entertaining speaker as he was back then. And that actually isn't a compliment, because he is one of the most dull speakers. But he did achieve things for farming that had a lot of vision and a lot of future, and we're still reaping the benefits of. But again, I don't believe Hypercar Supply is an issue, and it's gone. The revenue cap, I'm gonna deal with or talk about that a little later also. Level of service legislation, I believe is one of the things that farmers need to demand, that it gets looked at and some teeth put in and it gets acted upon. Other issues, again, part of that 90% that we can't see, I hope people can come up with some of them, and there's going to be some discussions that we need to deal with, but we certainly need to think about the 90% of the things that aren't evident right today, and there are very futuristic thinking people out there, and we need to look at some of those things. So the revenue cap. I don't want anybody here to go away from this meeting saying Lonny McKague's calling for the revenue cap to be abolished, because I'm not. I do not believe that by paying more money to CP or CN that we are going to get better service anytime soon. I just don't believe that it's going to come down. If we give them more money, they're going to give us better service. We've heard today that the grain industry is paying per tonnage on par with oil right now and above potash, and yet we don't seem to have the movement that those companies have, and I don't know why that is and what the problems are. It could be logistics. It's highly possible. When Ogama Elevator was working with the Canadian Wheat Board, when we had logistical problems, sometimes we phone Paul Stowe, but normally we phone the Canadian Wheat Board, we phone one number. And we dealt with our logistical issues with just that one phone call. If anybody can tell me what number I can dial to deal with our logistical issues today, I'll certainly take the number, but there just isn't one number out there right at the moment. So
I've got Jerry's number.
Yeah, okay. I've heard that he's got Jerry's number, but you know, the humor's there. The truth of the matter is, there are serious logistical problems that are happening, that there was a situation before that handled them, whether you liked it or not, or whether you're a pro board person or not. There was those side benefits that they were doing for us that aren't being done today, and we're in that flux in the middle right now of trying to figure out how to get it done. And I think there's going to be some people paid dearly in the next 2 years Because we've only seen a downturn of 4 months in the grain economy right now. We haven't seen 4 years. We've seen 4 months. And there's some people out there right now that are hurting very, very badly. And when they tell you their stories, if you have any compassion at all, you may have marketed your grain great, but these people that haven't, if you have any compassion at all, you will feel sorry for them. So the revenue cap, I'm going to draw a line in the sand and say, I don't want it taken off. I don't want it looked at for removal or not. But if there was a graduate student from some very highly regarded ag economic faculty that wanted to take on a project, I believe that right now the grain companies have increased basis over and above their normal basis, $50 to $70, we're told. Is there a part of that basis that we could take and put into a temporary revenue adjustment to pay them more, where there is a return, a net return to the farmers of some of that other $50 or $60 per ton? So is there some way to see if we paid the railways $10 a ton more, if there's a return of farmers for $20 or $30 a ton benefit in the short term? And I'm not saying to do that up to this. Railroads have promised to move 5,000 cars per week per railroad. They're moving around 3,700 to 3,900 to date. They're behind about each. They're behind about 2,000 cars per week in general. I'm saying this would take over after their promised 5,000 cars. And would there be a net benefit to farmers? And is there a target that we can see that if they actually achieved any net benefit over a 6 or 8 month period? Now what would happen would be, maybe if they did achieve excess movement, it would be in their best interest. Maybe we would work ourselves out of a glut situation. But I think we need to study it. And Mark said in his earlier presentation that to put it on the table and talk about it's not a bad thing. But for me to put the whole topic on the table, I don't believe that by paying double the rate that we're going to get double the service. I just don't see that happening. But perhaps if there's some economists out there that want to do a project and they can look at it and see if there's a net return, and the government should be looking at it anyway, and they should be, and I'll call on them to look at, is there any short-term benefit to get us out of this glut by doing that? And then if the railroads don't perform, immediately go back to the old system, and have a target that they have to meet this target or go back. So I don't believe there's a true benefit, but if we're going to look at it, we need to look at it with some facts and figures, and I'd call on them to get the facts and figures prior to looking at this as a situation. I actually will, and I'm going to be backed up a little bit. The nice thing about being away from home and in a hotel and sleep in a little bit and read the paper is you get to do some background. And here's this morning's Star Phoenix. And here's a quote from Murray Mandrick, one article. It's not dealing with the railway cap, it's dealing with other Saskatchewan issues, but I think we can take it and use it. You need to find out what's going on to place, this is a quotation, you need to find out what's going on in places like Saskatchewan before you decide to cut a program based on the fact that you don't think it's working. So that's an important quote. And he goes on to say that in Saskatchewan, we have 13 out of 14 MPs on the government side, that it's almost 10% of the government, and that they need to probably do a little more research or be a little bit more proactive for their local province rather than just take the national heads down approach to accept it. And I think that if we can do that, if we can look at this quote and say, don't throw things out until you know, just because you don't think it's working. Do some research and get to know the facts will be important. And I think we need to get a hold of our MPs and let them know that this isn't working, and they have to get to know the facts before they start making decisions. And he goes on and says, "This is from an angry Brad Wall." That's the quotation. So I congratulate the Premier on taking them on and saying that there's issues that they need to get to know, but and they were down in Winnipeg last Friday, but they're provincial government and dealing with federal legislation, and we do have 14 MPs in Saskatchewan, and I don't know if they're absent or if they're not there promoting the same things that we feel on the farm, or if they need to come home a little bit more. But there's some issues that people can do. Lots of you know these people personally and well. You can phone them and say, "This is huge, this is big. You need to act, and you need to act on our behalf. You don't need to act on the behalf of other people on this across Canada. You need to vote for Saskatchewan on this one." And I think that might go a long way in recognizing some of the problems that we're sitting at today. So again, that's a little more serious note than I wanted. We're a small little group. We do producer cars. We're turning business away because we can't get rail cars right now. It's something we never dreamed that would ever happen. So along with being happy, we're sad. Thank you very much.